Hey Parrot Heads, welcome back to all the stories that I can tell. Thank you all that watched my first two vlogs of the top 10 Jimmy Buffett sites in Key West. That was a lot of fun to film those down there. Well, as you can look around, obviously I am not in Key West, Florida anymore. I am missing my little tropical island. The weather up here in Northeast Ohio, which is my stomping grounds, is turning. It is fall, winter is coming, it is cold, it is chilly. We are in the mid-50s, temperature dropping, and we have snow in the forecast. So I am feeling the need for a little Key West and a little Jimmy Buffett in my life. So I have come down here to the Flats in Cleveland, and I am going to be going into the Margaritaville Cafe located here. The other thing that we're going to do on this vlog is we are going to review a brand new book that just came out by Mr. Scott Atwell called Buffett Backstories. And if you like the previous vlogs of the Jimmy Buffett locations, you will absolutely love this book, chronicling 50 years of Jimmy Buffett songs on the 50th anniversary of his first time down to Key West, 1971 to 2021. We're going to go over this book, we're going to go inside, we're going to do our best to get a Cuban sandwich and a Landshark Lager. Come on in. All right, so we are inside the Margaritaville here in Cleveland. Now, before we get to the book review, I just kind of wanted to go over some of the neat things here in this location. Now, I am in here, I am catching this before like the crowds start to come in. I'm catching this at an off time as I'm walking in. So over here we have one of the three bars that are located here. This is the 5 o'clock somewhere bar. Upstairs on the top is the outdoor deck bar where you get a view of Lake Erie. Really, really cool. The thing about this Margaritaville is that this is bigger than most of the other ones I have ever been in. Certainly much bigger than the original one over on Margaret Street in Key West, and certainly bigger than the one on Duval Street as well too. This has several floors to it, and it's huge. So if you ever get a chance to come here, bring a big party with you because there's plenty of room here. So that was the first bar that is located here. And as you can see, we also have a pontoon boat is where some of the table seating is set. Over there is bar number 2. And we also have the typical Margaritaville Jimmy Buffett type stuff that is here. We have the fishing rods over there, the Margaritaville sign. So this is really, really well decorated. You can't help but walk in here, especially if you're from Cleveland like I am, where it is cold 9.5 months out of the year, and you come in here and you instantly feel warm and inviting and like you're almost back in the Keys. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at the menu here in a bit, and then we're going to get into that book review. All right, so I am feeling much better about things. I have been seated now at the Margaritaville Cafe here in Cleveland, located down in the Flats District. I have my draft Landshark Lager, which I do not believe you can get anywhere else in Northeast Ohio, let alone the Midwest, other than a Margaritaville Cafe. So here I am, in my own mind, back in Key West, thinking Jimmy Buffett, thinking warm, happy thoughts while it's cold outside and snow is in the forecast. So I want to talk a little bit about this new book that just came out, Buffett Backstories, written by Mr. Scott Atwell. Scott Atwell, let me give you a little bit of background on him before we move on. Scott was born in Key West, Florida, and he grew up there. As a young man, he went to the mainland of Florida, and he entered a broadcasting career that took him to Florida State University, Miami, etc., Tallahassee, all of these areas. 35 years later, he's back in Key West, and he never forgot his roots. So he has returned to Key West and his love of Jimmy Buffett music. He got a gig playing Jimmy Buffett music for 1 hour a day on one of the local radio stations, and that got him thinking. He was thinking about the songs that he was playing and what the stories were behind those songs and the locations that they took place at. Very similar to what my previous vlogs had done as well too. So he began to write this book in commemoration of the 50th year that Jimmy Buffett went down to Key West, Florida. We've heard that story. Went down with Jerry Jeff Walker, went to the chart room, had that Heineken beer, met Phil Clark, met Tom McGuane, met Tom Corcoran, met all those folks, met his wife Jane, and the rest is history. Well, he took those memories and he put this book together. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over some of the highlights of this book and how you can get it and how you can order it and enjoy it for yourselves. So I'm gonna have me a drink of this Landshark Lager draft. I'm gonna look at the menu. I'm gonna see if I can get myself a decent Cuban sandwich, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I am looking on the menu, trying to find something that will make me feel a little closer to Key West, Florida. And I look at the appetizers and I see on here that they have Key West chicken quesadilla. Now, I really hope these are not real Key West chickens that they're serving here, because that would be really, really not cool. It's a joke I tell all the time. It gets no laughs. So that poor waitress has no idea what I was talking about. But I thought it was a funny joke. I've used it for years in Key West. I've never gotten one laugh with that joke, ever. So anyway, the foreword to the book, Buffett Backstories, was written by Bob Lieberman. So who's Bob Lieberman? That's what I said too. Bob Lieberman. Lip Balm Lieberman was his name. Lip Balm. So if you know the song, The Weather Is Here, I Wish You Were Beautiful, you hear at the very beginning of the song all the chatter from the bandmates and the road crew going on, and then you hear Jimmy scream, Lip Balm! Well, that's who Lip Balm was. He was the tour manager for Jimmy Buffett and the Coral Reefers starting in 1977. And you also hear him also later on in that intro to the song where the one female reeferette says, Bobby, can I have the keys to the rent-a-car? Again, talking about Bob Lieberman. So he writes the foreword, and his time with Jimmy Buffett, I believe it was 10, 12 years, somewhere around that time he served as the tour manager. He's got a lot of great stories. And he writes the foreword to this book. And in my mind, it sets the table perfectly, because you're gonna get a lot of these kind of backstories that you're just not aware of. Some of these stories that are in this book, some of them we know, some of them we didn't know, some of them we knew a little bit about, but now we have a lot more information on. And it's very important that we were able to get that perspective on these. The other thing that I really like about this book is that it does start at the very beginning. It goes back, the first chapter is Railroad Lady, and that was a song that was written by Jimmy Buffett and Jerry Jeff Walker. And it gives the history of that song. I wasn't aware that they actually rode the train that inspired this song. I thought they were just writing a railroad sign like every other country western artist did at the time. But no, they were actually on the train, and that's what inspired the song. So I think that's fascinating. It started at the very beginning of the songwriting, and it goes all the way up to It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere, which was written in 2003. So if you start reading this book from start to finish, you start at Railroad Lady, 1970, 71, and you go all the way to 5 O'Clock Somewhere, and you get the history of all of those songs. And it's not just the Key West songs, you get everything off of nearly all of his studio albums are represented in some way in this book from those time periods. So we're going to talk about some of the highlights of the book here in a moment. All right, so I'm not going to go over all 50 chapters of this book. That's for you, the reader, to go ahead and do. But I just want to touch on a couple of the chapters that I really liked, and I want to point those out as highlights, I believe, in the book. The first being the chapter on A Pirate Looks at 40. Now, as we know, The Pirate Looks at 40 was written about Jimmy's friend, Phil Clark. And Phil has become this iconic, mythological Key West legend in Jimmy Buffett lore. And he was the pirate, the old crusty pirate. He has been drunk now for over 2 weeks. He passed out and he rallied and he sprung a few leaks. We know the rest of it. So a lot of the personality of Phil I think has been lost to that mythological lore, if you will. And what Scott has been able to do in this book, he talked with an ex-girlfriend of Phil's by the name of Carol Shaughnessy. And Carol was able to humanize Phil Clark in a way that I found very touching. So aside from the legend of Phil Clark and all the things that we've sung and we've read and we've heard, we never saw that real human side of him. And she was able to do that. For example, I didn't know that Phil loved nature shows. He loved shows about wolves and bears. He loved teddy bears. I mean, this was a real human being. And sometimes we forget that when we put these labels on people and they become these legends. that these were real people with real issues, real emotions, and that really came across to me. And that's one of my favorite chapters in this book. So I really hope that you guys check that part out. One of the other things that I found really interesting about this book is kind of put to rest all of the rumors that have been out there for decades about the origins of Margaritaville and Cheeseburger in Paradise. Now, both of those songs are in the Big 8 that we talk about that are played at every concert. And this one kind of is definitive. What were those songs written about? Where were they written? And it uses a lot of direct quotes from people that were actually there and direct firsthand knowledge, etc. So I think that is definitive now of solves the issue once and for all is where was Cheeseburger written? Why was it written? And the same with Margaritaville. I've got two others as well too that I want to go over here in just a moment of some of the highlights that I found in this book. All right, so dinner has arrived. So we have a Cuban sandwich, fries, pickle, and a cheeseburger in paradise, Heinz 57, French fried potatoes, a sort of a big kosher pickle, and a cold draft beer. We're hitting all the cliches here today. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. It's November, and I need a little bit of Jimmy Buffett in Key West. So this is what we're doing. So let's dig in. All right, so two of the other things in the book, Buffett backstories, that I really liked was the chapter on the song, one of my personal favorites, If the Phone Doesn't Ring, It's Me. That was written at a time that Jimmy doesn't talk a whole lot about, and for obvious reasons. That was a very, very tough time in his personal life. Him and his wife Jane had separated at that time, had gotten very close to divorce. I'm glad that they were able to work that out, and they're still together and very happy to this day. But it was a very tough time for them, and a lot of the songs at the time reflected that. And that chapter on If the Phone Doesn't Ring, You Know It's Me, goes into that. And you don't hear a lot about that time, but a lot of the songs that did come out of that were outstanding. That song is in there. Knees in My Heart was in there. Basically the entire Riddles in the Sand album, pretty much that whole thing had songs that were very reflective of that period in Jimmy's life. So that was a highlight to me, to see some of those stories that you don't hear a lot about, and I thought that was fascinating. And plus it's a happy ending because we know that they eventually worked things out and are together still to this day. The other thing that was in the book that I thought was fascinating, the fourth part that I wanted to talk about, was the history of Jimmy Buffett and Mac McAnally. We know that Mac went to work with Jimmy in the early 80s with the song It's My Job, and it documents that a little bit more, and it adds a little bit more, some more of the layers to that, and goes into some of the history of how Jimmy and Mac met and how they began their professional relationship, which turned into one of the best personal relationships that I think that either one of them have had in their entire life. So that is a real highlight in the book. It goes into their songwriting history and career, and it's all started with the one simple song.
Hello,
You sure can. Here she is, an employee at Margaritaville.
The best employee ever.
The best employee ever.
If you guys want free drinks, come to me.
Oh boy. You heard it there. I can't be responsible for that. But Jimmy Buffett, Mac McAnally, it goes into their history with that. So that's a real highlight. So those are the four main parts in the book that I absolutely loved. The entire book, chapter 1 through chapter 50, fascinating stories. It really, really gives an insight onto Jimmy Buffett and makes this one of those books that documents this for future generations. And I want to talk more about that here in a moment. All right, so if there's like one final thing that I could say about this book, I think it could best be described in the story of Larry Groovy Gray. Now, I did not know who Larry Groovy Gray was, I admit. And I consider myself a pretty big Jimmy Buffett fan. Larry was a roommate of the future Mrs. Jane Buffett, Jane Slagvall, when she was in college down in South Carolina. And she was actually there in 1971 at the chart room when Jimmy met Jane. So Larry and Jane were very good friends. Jimmy and Larry became very good friends. And it details in a couple of the chapters in the book, specifically in the chapter of The Night I Painted the Sky, the relationship that Jimmy had with Larry. And what happened with Larry was terribly tragic. So here was this great family friend of the Buffetts, and unfortunately he died in a plane crash. He was a pilot. He died in a plane crash, and it's very sad. And his story got me thinking, and this is what I kind of think about the entire book as a whole. A lot of the chapters ended with a death of one of the people that the song was either written about, or who was an eyewitness, or who was a part of the story of that song. And that got me thinking. And it's like, Scott did a real service for all of us in that he was able to put these stories into writing. And he put Larry's story into writing. He put all of the other stories, whether it was the old man that fought in the Spanish Civil War, that was the inspiration for He Went to Paris, or any of these other songs, Captain Tony, any of them, any of these songs that are listed in this book. There were a lot of people that passed away at the end of the chapters in this book. But by putting them into writing and putting them into a book form, he is passing those stories down to a next generation, future generations, that all of us will be able to learn and live these stories and tell these stories to others. And their stories and their history goes on. So to Larry Groovy Gray and all the others that played a part in this book and in the stories of Jimmy Buffett and the songs that we all know by heart and the Buffett backstories, I want to say thank you. Thank you to Scott. Thank you to the guys of the Back to the Island Foundation. You guys are doing a great job as well too. Let's all get back down to Key West. Let's all buy this book. It's a good read. I'll see you guys next time. Fins up, everyone.